I'm going to hit record now and be a little silly. So remember that promo thing that we talked about?
Hey, this is MK.
Yep, that's the one.
So wait. So what am I going to say? Hey, this is MK, and then what?
Hey, this is MK, and you're listening to Jeff Smith on Vroom Vroom Beer, something like that.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Hey, this is MK, and you're listening to Jeffrey Smith on Vroom Vroom Beer.
Well done, sir. Thank you very much. I will plug that in, and it'll sound wonderful. All right, I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Steve Rodgers, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer again, and welcome back. How's it going?
Show.
That's
thank
right.
you, Jeff. It is good to be back. It definitely is good to be back.
Yeah, and you're in San Diego. I'm in Las Vegas. We're both on pseudo lockdown phase 2. Welcome to COVID-19.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, at least I'm looking at you with the palm tree in the back and the ocean, so you definitely don't look too locked down.
That is a video. That's a virtual background.
Yes, I get it.
But you have real palm trees.
Well,
in
actually,
your back.
I got to see this morning when I did my bike ride. I was, doing my up and down the coast, and I see the ocean and the surfers. So I got to see that view that's behind you this morning in real time. So that was pretty good.
See, there you go. I don't get that view as often as I used to when I lived in LA.
Yes, that's true. You were right there.
We have palm trees, but no water.
Yeah. You have a lot of palm trees, but you have a lot of water there. It just is not natural water per se. You go to the Bellagio, wherever, you got water everywhere, right?
That's true. And we got Lake Mead.
That's true.
We have
cool
Lake Mead. Yes, it's cool. Okay, so this, if you don't know and you're listening to this show, this is going to be slightly different because this is Steve's second time. And the first show was really good.
We had fun for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and listened to it just so I didn't repeat myself a lot. So we won't redo that, but please, if you haven't checked it out, go back and find the Steve Rodgers Part 1. It was back in February 2016, and check it out. It's a lot of laughs, and it'll make this one maybe make a little bit more sense. But so since let's start around 2016. What have you been doing with yourself lately? Since 2016.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. We're in 2020 right now.
So that was about 4 years ago. That's not too bad.
Well, what I've been doing is staying in the intention of what I was creating back in 2016. That was about the time I had left running my own company in the real estate space, and I had started this consulting company, Alchemy Advisors.
Right.
So I'm happy to say that 4 years later, after talking to you, I'm still doing that and enjoying it and liking it.
Awesome.
And I'm a consultant and a coach and a speaker and now an author for a second book. And I have been staying and creating what I call a lifestyle business, meaning I've really very much enjoyed my life at a deeper level than I even was before. And I've always been a pretty happy, like life kind of guy.
Right.
So I've been helping different types of businesses. I've been learning about new businesses. I've been polishing up my skills, and I've been staying in the happy zone. So lucky to say I was a little, when you start something new, you're concerned, is this going to work? Is this going to have any sustainability?
Right.
And
am I going to make enough money to survive?
Exactly.
Can I pay the bills?
Enough money to survive and then thrive and then enjoy what I'm doing? And I can happily say that I've been doing all that. So that's been fun.
That's awesome. So it sounds like, all smooth sailing. I'm sure it's not.
Well, what's funny about it is it hasn't been all smooth sailing, but I have shifted my mindset over the years. And we were talking about this before the show started, in this COVID time, even about just how much the world is disrupted. But what I realize in life, we all have our COVID moments continually throughout life.
It's true.
Like even if the rest of the world is not having COVID shut down, stop, pause. Hey, world, you don't think you can slow down?
Right.
Yes, you can.
Right.
We all have those moments in our own life, even if the rest of the world isn't having them. So what I've come to work very, very hard on is my internal system of my operating system that I'm
Nice.
always in this this place of gratitude and acceptance, regardless of what's happening. So even when it
Right.
didn't go well,
Right.
or I didn't have the income I wanted, or the deal didn't go the way I wanted, or a client didn't show up or react or be as I had hoped, I still have found a way to stay peaceful and happy in that. So that's been
That's
a real gift.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, when you say that, you made me think of something, because a lot of times people like me, when I was younger, I thought that was my attitude, right? But what I really was doing was just sort of like in denial constantly. Which I think it's interesting. See, you know, right away, I'm not telling you anything.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about it, because I went through a large portion of my life where I was just sort of like very Pollyanna, if that's
Yes.
the right word.
Yes, absolutely.
Very just much like, yeah, that didn't go away. Well, whatever. Right.
Yes,
But internally, I was very upset about that.
Yeah, you still had anxiety and you were anxious and you were,
I wasn't actually processing the emotion.
Right.
So at that, which is different, right?
It is different.
It's completely different.
I think that's a really great point. I mean, I have been accused by others, and myself have accused my own self of doing exactly what you just said.
Right.
I'm too Pollyanna.
Right.
That I
Too happy-go-lucky.
Too happy-go-lucky.
Right.
I'm not taking things seriously. I don't see the magnitude as to what's happened, or
Right.
I'm not validating someone else's involvement or feelings in that process. And there are times that I'm probably still do that to this day.
Right. I think we're all a little guilty.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's a survival mode. Sometimes
It's like a defense mechanism.
It is, absolutely.
Yep.
But what I've realized is the depth and the layers of it have gone much, much deeper. That I heard this phrase yesterday, and I'd heard it before, but hadn't heard it in a long time. And it said, denial is where you don't even know I am lying. And and that's usually to yourself.
Yes.
Exactly. It's like, and usually that's like in denial about, I don't realize I'd gotten so fat, or I'm in denial that I drink that much, or I'm in denial that I'm spending that much money. It's like, we're just lying to ourselves constantly about stuff.
It's
but
true.
This happiness factor, I realize that, yes, I realize when I've had massive hardships in my life, whether it's deaths of other people, close to deaths myself, financial hardships, and I'm feeling the intensity of that pain, but I'm still finding ways to still stay calm and peaceful and happy where I can in that space. So I understand what you're saying, and it was work to get to that point. To dig
It's
and
always
process
work.
that.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's just important to, to highlight the fact that I could give an example of, I just bought this house that I'm living in now in April of 2019. Every house in Vegas has to have a drip irrigation system.
Okay.
Otherwise, everything will be dead.
Yes. Yeah, it is a desert area, they told me.
That's right. Well, I kind of knew that I was having to buy into that, right? But it was so like back in the background of everything I had to deal with buying a house.
Right.
When I started dealing with the fact that I was now a homeowner in Vegas and I had to make this thing go or all my trees would die, I was totally in denial.
Got it.
But what I learned was that if I wanted to stay in denial about my responsibility to this irrigation system, which sounds so stupid now,
But at the time, it was the most important thing in your mind, I'm sure.
It was funny even in the moment. But
Yeah, right.
But what I was just like, okay, fine. I'll just, every time something goes wrong, I'll just pay somebody to come out and fix it, which they're happy to do.
Right, for sure. Like, we got this guy targeted right here. We know this guy.
Right. Well, what they want to do is they want to get you on the $40 a month plan.
Yeah.
But every time you call them out, it's at least $100, regardless of what they do. And they spend less than an hour, and they spend probably less than $5 on materials fixing your shit, right?
Yeah.
So this is one of those things that you really have to learn how to do.
Otherwise, you're going to help fuel a high margin business for somebody else, right?
Correct. So it took me about a year, and I'm kind of ashamed to figure that out. But yeah, to go out and learn all the little baby skills to make that thing go by myself. But yes, I just use that as a funny example of how I very recently was in denial. I don't think you can stop it.
No, it's definitely programmed into our brain, and it's part of that fight or flight thing, and it's part of the mechanism of how we're bombarded with so much information all day about making decisions and doing stuff for our work and our family, and
the world is just too much.
it's too much. It's like, it's something so simple sometimes to take care of. It's just one more thing. And we just deny it. We're not going to make that call. We're not going to pay that bill. We're not going to do whatever it is. We're not going to get that thing that was on our credit we were supposed to get off of, that how to get on there anyway kind of thing. It was like,
you know what though? I think mostly it's like with novelty and things that are new, right? You're gonna have to go through those things. Mine is a cute, stupid little example, but it doesn't, like, I have no problem spending money doing something I don't want to do. If I go into that I'm paying to get some time back, or I'm paying to get some wife time back, and it's worth the trade. Yes. If I go through that process, fine. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But the blindness is what I don't like about it.
Yeah. Well, an exercise that really brought that to home for me many, many years ago, I was going through a coaching program with Brian Tracy. And a lot of people probably know who Brian Tracy is, who's a speaker, author, writer. And Brian's become a good friend of mine. But at the time, this was probably 15, 20 years ago, about 3 months, every other week we met, and we had like these 2 or 3 hour sessions, and it was with CEOs and executives. But he had you do this exercise where you would evaluate what your time per hour was worth. Now, sometimes people are employees and they know what their hourly rate is, but many times if you're an executive or an entrepreneur and you're making gross income on an annual basis, you don't always know what your hourly rate is. So what he did is he had people saying, okay, what is it you want to make this year? What's your goal? What's your goal income? And then if it was, 100,000 or 200,000 or 500,000 or $1 million or whatever that number would be, then he said, okay, until you have your actual hours down, you take your annual hours at approximately 2,060 hours per year, and you divide it by how much you say you want to make that year. And then it brings it down to your hourly rate. So it might be like you're at your, it might be $100 an hour, $150 an hour, or $75 an hour. If you say, hey, I want to make $250,000 and I'm only making 180, or I want to make 150 and I'm only making 75, what is your actual hour rate to get to that point? And then he said, okay, look at your daily schedule or weekly schedule. And are you going to the grocery store? Are you picking up dog poop? Are you doing your own laundry? Could you pay somebody 15 or 20 or $80, whatever an hour to do that work, so you could use your time to go do more things that are your high hourly rate things that get you to that level? And it really kind of was like, whoa, sometimes it seems like a luxury to delegate things out. Have people do things.
Right. That's for rich people, right?
And that's how you get to be rich at times, is by leveraging your time and doing less tasks that are not going to get you to your goal. So
that's really neat. I've never heard that one before. That's really smart.
Yeah. Right. I use that with my clients all the time, because they're like, well, I want to make this much money and I want to make this happen and I want to get to this sum. I'm like, where are you at now?
Right.
How many, what's your gross? What's your net? Okay, you want to double your income. Okay, let's look at what that would be. And then boom, let's break that down.
Yeah.
And then I go, okay, why then are you spending 18 hours a week doing stuff that's $25 an hour that you could be having XYZ person do? You know what I mean? So it's like, well, but I can't let that go, or no one else is going to do it as good as me, or, it's like one of those things we all have. So, but it's a great exercise to look at that, to figure out things.
That's true. That's one of those things that what you just said, that thing about like, nobody's going to do it as good as me. Right. We all have that.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. When I was still in the military, I learned that the military is really good at teaching you how to do leadership and delegation, right? Different things, right?
Yes, right.
But there's no possible way that you can do everything. And you shouldn't.
Right.
Because you're taking work away from your troops, right?
That's
and they need to learn and they need to do stuff too.
That's right.
So you have to let go of those little pet project things.
That's right. Absolutely.
Right.
Good point. Very good point.
Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about your spiritual practice, because I never get to those. and so I want to hit it before we get, run out of time. But talk a little bit about like your daily practice. I know you have a gratitude. You probably do a meditation. What's it look like?
Yeah, I do have a daily practice. And the way I started getting into a daily practice is, I have had a strong spiritual belief since I was a kid. My parents were and still are alive and still married and great. They just celebrated 60 years of marriage, and they had 5 kids in 6 years. So we were a Catholic and a tribe of kids, all boys. And my dad was in the military.
Cow. Wow. Yeah.
So it was a tense upbringing, but they were very, very devout Catholic.
Sure.
And so every Sunday we were in church. I went to CCD. We had a very embedded, deep religious background. And as a kid, I understood the importance of that, and I was appreciative that my parents had a belief in something higher than themselves. But at a young age, I started really asking myself, I remember like at 10 or 12 years old, I go, why do I have to go through that man in that box to talk to God? Why can't I just go wholesale and go directly? You know,
right.
like
good. Yeah.
So
I wasn't the only one. Right.
So I started having these
and
questions.
Especially because like Jesus actually says that in the New Testament.
Right.
And then we go back and do it anyway. It's never made any sense.
Exactly. So I had this high belief in a higher something than myself, but I just got really struggled with the man-made portion of it. So over the years, as a teenager and an adult, I started really just searching spirituality for myself. And I call myself a spiritual mutt. I'm a very spiritual person on an hourly basis of every day. But I'm not religious in a sense that I follow a structured religion like being a Catholic per se, or I believe in a higher power. I believe in God, which is what I call God. But my spiritual practice then started becoming part of my daily life and practice. And when I started getting coaches in my mid-20s, when I was climbing the corporate ladder, I always had a business coach, and they drilled into me having a daily practice. Exercise, setting your goals, all the stuff that's related
sleeping
to
right,
business.
eating right,
exactly.
All of those things,
all of that stuff.
Nail breakfast.
Exactly. Having your routine, getting your calendar the night before, laying your clothes out the night before. I mean, just all the stuff that like gives you a little tiny bit of an edge. Right. And I started incorporating my spiritual practice into that routine. And then over the years, I also started hiring coaches that were also spiritually based in incorporating that into their coaching practice.
That's
so
great.
that allowed me to, on a daily basis, I have every morning I get up and I do meditation. I do some kind of spiritual reading. I do my affirmations, and then I do some type of exercise that's going to cause me to do a sweat. Like this morning I biked, yesterday I ran. So I do some type of exercise. And then I have what I call my four Bs, which are body, being, bonds, and business. And on a daily basis, I'm just trying to get to 4 points. And so I've got this little scorecard that I do here.
Wow. I like that.
That's
it's like a little whiteboard.
It's a little whiteboard, and it's like a tic-tac-toe thing. And on a daily basis, on my body, my being, my bonds, and my business, I'm trying to get to 4 points a day. And each category has a half point for each one. So it might get like a half a point or a 0. But that becomes a daily practice in my spiritual practice, because part of that is also the being part. And the being part is where whatever I call God, which I call God, I have to do something on a daily basis that expresses the principles in which I believe in the world. Whether that's through my work, to another human being, to my relationship with my family, to the community. So my daily practice consists of that. I also do meditation. So I meditate in the morning. I meditate a couple times throughout the day for 5 or 10 minutes. I just pause in between Zoom calls and I just do a breathing meditation. Okay. I also do yoga throughout the day. I'll take like 10 minutes and stop, and I have a mat right in front of my desk, and I'll do some yoga poses. And then before COVID, I was doing a couple classes a week.
Yoga's great. That's
I love
ancient technology, man.
Oh God, it's the best thing
Just
for me.
like I don't do a practice anymore, but I still have all the moves in the memory bank.
Yeah.
Right. And some of those moves are just like magic.
Oh, 5 or 10 minutes of just doing downward dog or doing, child pose.
What's the one where you stand up really straight and scrunch up your butt cheeks? It's just like mountain or something like that.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
And then you put your hands above your head. Yeah. So it's
then you can do tree, or you can do the warrior pose, or you can do downward dog, upward dog, cat cow. Get on your hands and knees, put your back up, push your back down.
That's right.
It's like, oh my God, that feels so good, and we forget how just moving our body. For 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, it doesn't like you have to go to the gym and do like this whole huge workout. So for me, that connects me with my breath, with my mind, with my soul. So to me, yoga is a form of prayer. Because when I'm doing yoga, I'm thinking about really intense stuff about spirit or God or higher purpose. So I'm using that moment. And then I I have something that says I have to earn my meal every night. So before I can eat my dinner, I have to do some type of exercise for 15 or 20 minutes before I can eat my dinner. So that could be just walking around the block, taking the dog for a walk, going on another bike ride, doing push-ups, sit-ups. So it's called, I got to earn my meal. So before I can eat, I just do another 10 or 15 minutes of something. And then at night, I do an evening meditation before I go to sleep, just for 10 minutes. So that is all of that I call a spiritual practice, because it's geared
but
towards
it's there, like
connecting.
it's throughout the day, which I really like.
It's therapeutic, and it keeps me balanced, and it keeps me harmonious.
Right. And it brings you back to that sort of like quiet, calm center. Like a lot. I can tell a lot.
Absolutely.
And you need that,
Yeah.
I remember,
Exactly.
I think I was reading back when I was still active duty Air Force, and just, all things like just happening all at once. It's like, right. And I was lucky enough to have a door on my office, right? And I could just like
close
the door and like have a little freak out, right? Oh my God, the boss wants this and he wants it like yesterday, and it's like everything's on fire. And instead of like what I would ordinarily do, right, was, just to go as fast as I could, I would just like sit there, I don't know, as long as I could, 10 seconds, a minute, whatever I had, and just try to breathe, right?
Yes. Try
to find that sort of like quiet space where that you get to when you meditate.
Yes.
And think of nothing. Obviously you don't actually ever really think of nothing, but just try to quiet your thoughts and then go and then do the thing. Right.
Yeah.
Oh my
Absolutely.
God. It's transformational.
Oh, it's so powerful. It really is. It's and we're going to talk about this later, I know, but one of the last chapters in my current book is on breath, prayer, and meditation. And how that really helps do exactly what you just said, sums it up perfectly. That taking that time for yourself, it's all day we're doing for everybody else. We're doing for the boss. We're doing for kids. We're doing for our spouse, our girlfriend, our partner, our boyfriend, whatever it might be. We're doing. We're running. We're checking our phone. We're going. We're like, once we wake up in the morning, our feet hit the ground and we're just going. And we get on this autopilot.
Right.
Unless
you're on the treadmill.
unless we choose not to do that.
Right.
And the only way you can choose not to do that is consciously doing what you just said, or
catching yourself.
Catching yourself and saying, okay, every hour I'm going to take 3 minutes or 5 minutes and close the door or turn off my phone or put on meditation music or just breathe in my body or do a walk, whatever it would be. And it's not that, it really thinks, oh, how could I have time to do that? It really gives you more time.
Right.
Because when you come back, you're not as frenetic, you're more focused. You can get more purposeful. So I find that is what people are really lacking right now, is we are on this treadmill of faster, more.
The world is always too much. Everything in 2020 is too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's probably, if you're looking for a spiritual answer of why COVID, why 2020, maybe it's just God telling us to slow the F down.
Yeah. I believe that absolutely.
Maybe
I believe that absolutely. I absolutely believe that. There's too big of a reset button on here. I mean, we think about like our devices. I mean, the other day I had to do updates on my iPad and my iPhone. It had an automatic update and it had to shut down and it had to go through and it had to process to then get itself reset to be able to do whatever the new updates were. That sometimes happen automatically and sometimes you can do it manually. And in technology or in software, we know about, got to have updates, have to have resets, hardware has to be replaced.
Right.
And I believe in the global planetary consciousness of Mother Earth, nature, God, universal intelligence, that we as a society in healthcare and government and fairness and environmental issues and whatever have just not been paying enough attention. And the universe said, hey, you're not doing this yourself. I'm doing an automatic reset because all of you didn't think, it's like the pause button and the update button is now happening and your software is being upgraded. You may not like it. It's going to be painful. But when it's done and the dust settles, you're going to realize it took this to give you all new consciousness to be able to reset for the future in which you want. And I know that
Earth level reboot.
I absolutely believe that, because if I don't, I go crazy thinking that there's no sense to this, and what you said earlier about there's a spiritual answer to this. I mean, we were talking about before the show, Wayne Dyer and then also Deepak Chopra.
Love
one
them
of them
both.
wrote a book that said there's a spiritual answer to every question. You know, that at the end of the day, if you boil down to the bottom line of things at the end of the day, it's about love and purpose and higher power and God at the end of the day, or universe. And all of these things, major, significant, like COVID and racism and all the things that's happening in our world right now, are really a bigger lesson for us than just, is there going to be a virus shot soon? I mean, or is the market's going to come back, or when are the kids going to get back in school?
Right.
Those are repercussions of a much bigger issue at hand in our world overall.
Right. No, you're right. Somebody said early on in this whole thing was like, you know, are you going to sell your stocks? Right. And I'm like, God, no. Right. That's like the worst thing to do. But it led to this other like point. I think it was another guy. He was like, you shouldn't sell because either it's going to be so bad, it'll render the markets irrelevant, or it'll get better. It's binary. Right.
Right.
So in one way, you know, if you do nothing and there's no more money and there's just zombies and we all die, well, okay, don't sell, right? Don't worry about it, you know. Right. But probably not, right? And if probably not, then everything will be okay eventually. I think is what his point was.
Yeah, and I agree with that point. Eventually, there is reasons for the craziness that we see in the world. Sometimes it takes time for us to see it, and sometimes people see it at different levels and in different places. But there's always rhyme and reason to what happens in the universe. You know, it's funny how the tides seem to know how to come in at every day. It's not like they need us to help them do it, or you know, the moon coming up, or the sun coming up and down, or going around. I mean, all the stuff that happens every day, our breath, our heart beating. You know, it knows how to work. You know, it knows how to make things happen. So it doesn't need us to do all of that.
Right.
And the universe will figure out how to correct these things that are
it's
not
part of a bigger
right
system. I think that's, you know, it's part of a bigger system.
It is.
Right.
And it's a reminder that we are all part of a bigger system. Like, thinking, oh God, it's too bad they had that COVID thing start in China. Well, it's not, you know, China went to another country, went to the rest of the world. Now this is something we all have a common problem with, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of, you know, where you live. And every part of the world has been affected by this, which has kind of leveled the playing ground.
Totally.
Of we are all human.
Right.
We all have common struggles. We all have issues at hand with our families and our finances and our health and our school systems. Yeah. And that's a common area. It's not Russia or China or African American or white or black. This is a human race issue at hand.
I liked the beginning of the pandemic. I would say like from March to maybe April or May. There was like this, I don't even know what it was, but the humanity, at least in the United States, was in the polite stage. But it didn't take long for humans to start being humans again, right?
Yeah.
It was sort of like spinning up tension on a spring, right? And I was like, okay, why aren't we having more violence? You know, that was my first question in April and May, right? I guess the sort of like, the polite stage worked at the global level, right? Nobody knew. It was like a bomb went off and nobody knew how to act.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, all right, dust settled. Let's go be human again. Yeah. And then the craziness ensues, you know.
Well, that's so true. And the pressure of that, I mean, it's like the phrase about, you know, what's inside of somebody, you really know when they get squeezed. And it's like an orange.
Yes.
You typically know if you're going to squeeze an orange or squeeze a grapefruit juice or orange juice is going to come out of it. You don't usually squeeze an orange and apple juice comes out of an orange.
Right.
So when you pressurize something, hopefully what's on the outside is also what's on the inside. As human beings, we don't have that luxury. What we put up on the outside is not always what's on the inside of our psyche, of our mental belief, of our systems. And I think what's happening for individuals right now, companies, cultures, societies, political systems, is the squeeze is so intense that stuff that's really inside, which is also nice, sweet orange juice, but also some black, tarry, yucky stuff, it is also coming out, you know, from people, and they're being pressurized for their cause, for their right, for their disjustice, for their unhappiness. So it's being squeezed because fear causes that fight or flight thing to happen.
Right.
So I think that nicety, and I think you're seeing that signs of people that are being nice in stages. Some people are being consistently nice.
Right.
Some people are mean and then get to be nice. I think there's phases of, but I think it's becoming more obvious in the, the violence that's happening, the stuff you see on television, riots, looting, what are all these things that come as a result of it, or the political system of the fight that happens back and forth at all times. This has made it magnified and pressurized higher than we have seen in decades.
Right.
For sure.
Well, you and I, we've been alive long enough to see, disasters, tragedies, 9/11 comes to mind.
Yes.
And lots of big things that changed the world. But this is the first time that it's been everybody, right?
Yes.
Everybody, all humanity is now stripped down, undeniably, laid bare to say, look, this is survival, and don't, and people are denying it now, which is crazy.
Yes.
But, still, where we go from here is, I'm optimistic. I think we'll be fine eventually, but it's going to be a bumpy ride. We're not out of it yet.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. What's the phrase that talks about the cockpit shakes the most right before it goes through the sound barrier, and it breaks through. And if you're going through and the cockpit is just shaking, and then boom, once you go through the sound barrier, then there's peace and there's calm and there's joy. Or I think about even before COVID, in the days in 2008 when we were having the financial meltdowns, and I was in the real estate market working for a Warren Buffett company, running a very large organization. The world felt like it was falling apart, at least in my world, because of real estate and mortgage companies going down left and right. It was part of my daily experience. It was huge. And that did affect the world in a lot of ways.
It did.
But this even more so, because it's health, it's financial, it's all those things. But that intensity of that cockpit shakes the most before you break through the sound barrier, in my opinion, is what's happening right now. Or like when a woman gives birth. Obviously, I'm not a woman. I will never have a baby. But I have seen people have babies, and it looks like a painful damn thing to me. And it's not always pretty, and it's bloody, and it's sometimes messy. But by the time the process is done, the result of the baby and the baby on the mother's chest, or the smile and the tears in the father and mother's face, is magical beauty. But it took massive pain and transformation and just damn pain to make something like that come to pass. And I think that's just part of the price we pay as humanity. Sometimes pain and uncomfortableness is exactly what causes that change to happen that needs to happen. And I think that's where we're at as a global world right now, universally, as you've stated. So it's so obvious. I don't know that it's ever been this obvious.
Right. And you talked about, before we started talking, about somebody, I don't remember who, having a YouTube show. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really neat, because it's like something that's needed to happen. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, he started a show, and his show is called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man for White People, something like that. But it's on YouTube. And he ended up, he's an NFL football player, and I'm trying to blank on his name right now, so I'll have to put
Emmanuel something?
Yes, thank you.
Emmanuel Sanders?
Yeah, and he's an NFL football player.
Okay.
And he's African-American, a Black man, but he grew up in a white kind of environment, and his parents are doctors, but they were self-made. They worked at Taco Bell, and they worked at different things, and they were self-made. But he had a very interesting upbringing, that he understands white society and Black society, and he talks to his Black friends and white friends about how do you communicate. So he decided to do this YouTube thing about 8 or 9 weeks ago about that, uncomfortable conversations about race with a Black man for white people, and it ended up getting like 30 million views. At this point, and he started getting picked up on the local Good Morning shows, and I was watching something on Apple TV last night. I happened to stumble upon it, and it was Oprah, and it was some new Oprah thing that was happening. I said, "Oh, what's she doing now?" And I clicked on it, and it was her doing a show with him now, that she started a series about talking about racism in America.
That's great.
And he said, all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get a call from Oprah. He goes, "So 9-10 weeks ago, he goes, the power of what one person can do to help change impact in the world. He goes, I didn't know my YouTube. I was hoping maybe 5 or 10 or 20 people saw my YouTube video.
Right.
I had no idea in my wildest dream that 30 million people, and that I'd get a call from Oprah. And now he's like sought out and he's doing all these talk shows. There's another audio that I'm reading right now, and it's called Anti-Racism. And he's a professor, and his book is also going through the roof. But he talks about it's no longer okay to say I'm either racist or I'm not racist or I'm an anti-racist, but you have to be in one of those categories of meaning saying I'm neutral or I'm not going to comment on it. That they talk about what's the difference of being anti-racist versus being I'm not a racist versus I am racist. And this book really talks about being neutral on the subject also is a form of racism. Meaning,
right,
like
you don't want to engage. You're just trying to avoid it.
You don't engage. You don't speak up. You don't.
Which
you allow
we're all guilty of, right?
Absolutely.
You just
so
don't
these
want
kinds
to
of
step in
things.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. We're all. I mean, I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. And I don't know that how whether you're black, white, brown, peach color, whatever, we all have a form of racism in our mind because we judge. Our mind obviously judges. Our mind does that. It judges. Is that good or bad? Is that hot or cold? Is if we just our brain is intended to evaluate every situation that happens to help us survive.
I'm glad that I think that if that one good thing happened because of the pandemic, that's a great silver lining, right?
Yes.
Because you and I talked, we said we so need that because as white dudes, right? Yeah. We're stepping in it all the time, and not on purpose.
No, not on purpose.
And we're trying not to do that thing that you were talking about. Don't engage. Talk about it, but talk about it. You have to be like super sensitive, right?
Yeah. You have to have the uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah. It's very, very uncomfortable to do that. So like I can tell the story about going out to eat. I can't remember where, like a Chili's or something like that. Some restaurant while I was doing an Air Force tech school. So these are all other Air Force people that I had just met. And we're all going out for fajitas, right? And some of them are white and some of them are black and some of them are something else and I don't even know, right? But as I'm sitting there, right, one of the guys says, "Did you notice that?" And I'm like, "Notice what?" "Well, you got your fajitas first." And I'm like, "What's going on?" Right? And they're all noticing that we're in the South now. I think we're in Biloxi, Mississippi. And they're feeling like they're being treated differently, right? And now I'm in the middle of an uncomfortable situation and I don't even know what to say, right? Right. So the first thing I said was, I didn't say it, right? But then I sort of like later on, I was like, it doesn't matter, right? If I saw it or didn't see it, why would I, right? It's not even in my mind.
That's right. It's not in your radar.
Not on my radar. Right.
Yeah.
So they were probably right that they were being discriminated against.
Right.
Right. And so, it's like one of these things that is so needed, I think, to have this sort of this show where we can have those uncomfortable conversations.
Right.
And it's important for white people.
It is.
Yes.
Because most of my white people friends that I have asked if they think that they're racist. Most of them would instantly say no. Some of them would say, well, a little bit. And some of them are, I don't know that I have any friend that would say, I am racist. Yes, I'm a racist and be proud of it per se, because then they wouldn't be in my friend circle per se. Right. But I think we all have this sense of, have you walked down a street and seen a group of black men and thought, should I walk around to the other side of the street? Should I, know, or if someone walks into a room and they're the only black person and there's a group of a white person, do you feel awkward? Do you think they feel awkward? Do you walk up and talk to them? Right. So and these conversations of bringing this up and examples of like last night, they brought up two little simple things. Like as I mentioned, I was in real estate, and this guy was telling a story, and he said, "Hey, my friend just bought this beautiful home in Austin, and we were walking through the house, and he is another football player of this guy who was on the show, and he said, hey, check these out. Don't you love these plantation shutters?" And then and for him, the white guy didn't think anything about it. Well, for the other black African American guy, for him, the word plantation is representation of slaves.
Right.
So, and I've said that. So I was like, really? I never even thought of that. Like that wouldn't even have been in my consciousness. Or like there was a woman on who was an executive in San Francisco, who's a white woman, a pretty high executive. And she was saying, I realize sometimes like I hear my team or staff have used the words, hey, boy, they're just kicking butt. And man, their boss is just a slave driver, you know?
Right.
And that, you know, that word slave driver, it's like, oh, wow. When you think about that, I have said that before. Like, oh, God, that guy's a slave driver. Well, when you think about what that really means, and thinking about people being in chains and not able to live their life and living on a plantation, and that there actually were slave drivers, that was jobs that were actually functioned to whip and beat and kill people sometimes.
Right.
It's pretty awful. Where that, you go, well, those are just words. Well, those don't really mean that anymore. Or they got into talking about, you know, the N word. And why is it okay for Black people to use the N word with each other and we're not allowed to say that? And it's all these things you go, wow. You know, so it's a very interesting, uncomfortable conversation. But when you hear the perspectives of it, it does make you have a aha moment. At least I have. There's a great documentary. Have you seen it? It's called 13.
The 13th? I think it's 13th.
And it's based on the 13th Amendment, a documentary.
That was a real eye-opening kind of scenario for me.
It really was.
Yeah.
I mean, it really made me understand when people say systemic racism. I don't know that I ever really, that I never really understood exactly what that meant. And after watching that documentary, I realized that it's laws,
kind of baked in,
and it's baked in government decisions that have been made. And I was like, wow. And when you watch this documentary, it really puts perspective on things. And I go, wow, I don't have that issue. I'm a white man living in America who, you know, grew up in the Midwest and had Black friends and was around, you know, interracial relationships and all kinds of things. So, but it doesn't mean I'm not have a form of racism in me. I do. I mean, I have, you know, I have it in some fashion. I don't think it's a degree. I think it's
more of like just like what me and fajitas, right?
Yeah.
It's not like we're thinking that we're racist and we're going out and, you know, going to rallies and going, you know, be saying bad things, right?
White power or
We're not screaming white power and wearing hoods. No, but to say that you're not, I think it's just, it's almost naive to think I don't have a racist bone in my body. You're too hard on that. We all have something to learn, I think. Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
I know I do for sure.
You know, and when I am, I'll tell one more story, and then we're getting close to wrapping up, if you can believe it. This went really fast. I went to school, massage school, and a friend of mine happened to be Black, did a favor for an old Asian woman, right? And he ended up getting a ride by her to a beach city, Torrance, in California, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And through weirdness, he was basically arrested for being Black in Torrance.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, so I was like mad for him.
Yeah, right.
So they kept him locked up for like 2 days without actual process. And then when they let him go, they had him sign some things that said that he wouldn't sue them.
Oh, wow.
Now, if he had money, he could totally sue them.
Right.
So that's why, right? I mean, that's why the institutions know they can get away with it, because that person has no resources. Our legal system, if you don't, so you would have to spend so much money to bring any sort of suit against that. Right. A lot. And you're not really going to win anything other than the fact that you're going to prove a point that everybody already knows.
Yeah, right.
But I was just really mad that that would happen. You know, now. Yeah. I mean, that was probably like 2013, so it wasn't long ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely come a long way, a long way since the 13th, if you would, the 13th Amendment, and that people have been freed. But to think they were ever enslaved is just, mind-boggling. But and you think of the civil rights movement in the 60s and Martin Luther King and all the other people that came before and after him. We have definitely come a long way, but by no means are we at a state of higher consciousness about racism, not only for Black but Hispanic, and this Black Lives Matters movement is not just about Black Black Lives Matters. It's really more about the oppressor and the oppressed, those that are being oppressed and the oppressor. It's about power, and people are Hispanic or Chinese or Asian American, whatever. This Black Lives Matter for me is more of a movement about people have had enough. Many people have had enough. Some people haven't, of the oppression being so acceptable and a way of life. And that it's not that anyone's trying to take away something from another group or race or person. It's trying to create equities and
all lives matter. All lives matter.
All lives matter. It happens to be right now that Black Lives Matter, because that is a topic that is the most obvious, that when people are being killed by police officers or whatever, that it's just so obvious that let's make this the cause that is showing people are still being oppressed at a level that is not unfair, that is unfair in America and the world. And what can we do about it?
So talk about it.
Yeah.
We definitely, that show on YouTube and with Oprah, that's amazing, because that's what we need. This has been a kind of an uncomfortable thing for me to talk about. That's good. We need to do that. Because we've all stepped in it. Anyway, this has been a blast. So talk a little bit about how people can best get in touch with Steve Rodgers on the interwebs and the intertubes and the nets and the socials.
Yeah, well, you can remember Steve Rodgers by Captain America. His name's Steve Rodgers, so that's an easy way to remember. By no means do I have the body or the skills or the special powers of Captain America, but I guess I have my own in my own way. So they can reach me at steverogers.net.
Right.
And Rodgers does have a D in it, unlike Captain America. So RODGERS. You can get a free chapter of my new book that's coming out called The IGI Principles. And the IGI Principles came from the reverse of ego. You and I were talking about Wayne Dyer earlier before we got on the show. And Wayne used to always talk about, Wayne Dyer was a great writer and a spiritual activist.
Love Wayne
and
Dyer.
A psychologist and a great leader. But anyway, his mantra on ego was, when you're in ego, keep in mind that we all have it. We will never not, and it's part of our psyche, and it's part of allowing us to thrive.
It's not necessarily bad. You need one.
It's not exactly
right.
But when you're in it too much and you're in it at a depth, it's edging good out, or edging God out, or edging greatness out. I'm like, that's just such a simple thing. I go, so many years ago when I read that, I said, well, what's the opposite of that for me? I always like having these little shifts. And so that would be inviting good in, or inviting greatness in, or for me, inviting God in. So I came up with this thing called IGI. So every day I ask myself, am I an ego or am I an IGI?
And it's funny.
And so I
you
like
made up
10
a
years
word.
ago, I saved all these domain names like 10 years ago. Got IGI, get IGI with it, IGI CEO, IGI Principles. And I thought, I'll do with it something with this someday.
Right.
And I just kept using that in my own daily practice. And now the book is being launched called The IGI Principles. And it's steps that you can use in your personal life and in business to stay in IGI versus ego. And that's also on my website. And I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and the different places people can check me out as well.
That's awesome. And I'm sorry, but we didn't get to my health journey. I wanted to do that. I've talked about it a lot. We'll have to do show number 3 sometime.
We will, absolutely. 3's a charm. We've had great time on the first 2, so we'll have to do 3rd as a charm.
I know. You have co-host potential. So if you ever...
thank you. I appreciate that. Coming from you, that's a huge compliment. After you're the seasoned vet of doing this for a while.
You're getting into my hang around and podcasting strategy. Just spend a little money, hang around.
Well, you do a good job at it. So
thank you, Steve. This has been a blast. You have a good one, and have a safe drive to Los Angeles.
I will. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks everybody for listening.
Take it easy.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.